Hello. This week, week 2, we're going to talk about gender pay gap and gender identity and expression. Gender is an interesting word that many people seem to think it means man or woman or female or male or vagina or penis. And what I'm going to teach you this week is that gender has a vast vast variety of meanings, but sex is the only word and the only definition that means male or female or anatomical markers of vagina or penis, okay? So when you hear someone say, what is your gender? Are they asking, what is your anatomical marker? Or are they asking, how do you identify? And for many, it means the same. And because for many it means the same, we just always confuse gender with sex. So the one thing I want you to learn this week is sex is not gender. Sex is male or female. That's it. Nothing else. End of discussion. Put a period at the end of that sentence, okay? Gender, however, that's the spectrum. And gender, and I'm going to read my definition because I want to make sure I get it right, and I don't want to say it from memory and then inadvertently say something incorrect, okay? So gender is the social, cultural, and psychological behavior or traits of and associating as or presenting as or identifying as male or female based on socially constructed ideologies of what gender means to society. Okay. Whew, that's a big definition. So what does that actually mean? So when gender is used, we want to make sure we understand that it is, what do we look like to other people? How are we performing our gender? So in society, because gender is socially constructed, by the way, okay? And that's another thing I want you to understand. So in our society, we all have an idea of what it looks like to be male, and we all have an idea of what it looks like to be female. Those are the socially constructed ideologies of gender. So when someone who is biologically male presents more as female based on those social constructs, we don't understand how they identify. They may identify as male still, or maybe they identify as female, or maybe they identify as non-binary, or non-conforming. However they identify is specifically and personal to them. Because gender is that spectrum. Nobody, even if we are cisgender heterosexual, nobody is 100% male or 100% female in how they identify. Because there are things that our society has deemed or identified as being male or female, but not everybody fits in this nice little box, okay? Not everybody fits in an identity that matches everybody else. I identify as gender nonconforming or gender fluid. More about gender and identities later when we talk about LGBT issues and transgender issues. But what does that mean for me? It means I still believe that my anatomy is male. I still believe I am male. But there are things that I like that are traditionally assigned, shall we say, by society as female. But I don't pay attention to those labels anymore. I don't. If I like a shirt that is sold in the women's department, but I like what it looks like, I'll buy it and wear it. Or pants, or whatever. I don't identify as female, so I'm not going out there to present as female. But there are certain things that I particularly like that are, by definition of society, female, that I will participate in, such as painting my nails, or might possibly wear a shirt or pants that are bought in a women's department. Okay? So just like a lot of people out there, some women like to wear a flannel shirt. Does that mean they're a man? No. Some women like to wear a baseball cap. Does that mean they're a woman? No. Some men like to wear female undergarments because it's more of a fetish for them. Does that mean they're a female? No. So we need to learn to be more accepting and more tolerant. And this is what we're going to learn this week about gender. That is a spectrum. And we don't have to be in this box of male and female. It's okay to not follow gender norms that has been prescribed by society. Okay? One of the things that I learned in my master's program was about Judith Butler in the 1980s. She's a PhD person who got a PhD in gender studies, and she is believed, or she came up with the idea that gender is performed, that gender is performative, is really what she said. And what does she mean by that? It means that we will do our gender based on how we feel. And how we feel and what we wear and present and how we act, that's a performance. Kind of like we're all these actors on a stage, right? So as we look around in our society, we will see various forms of gender being performed in our society. Many of them will fit in this, what we call the norm, and that's okay. Some of them are out here on the ends, and that is okay also, all right? So when we talk about gender, the one thing I want you to understand is that gender is a construct, and it falls along a spectrum, and there's not one way or to be male or not one way to be female. Okay? I'm going to go on and talk about gender pay gap. That is still a thing, ladies and gentlemen. Would mean men and women are not equal in pay. All right? However, that does not mean if there is a man at a company and a woman at a company and a woman says, yeah, I get paid $15 an hour and he gets paid $16. That's not what I'm talking about when we talk about gender pay gap. There has to be some sort of analysis or some sort of baseline or something to base it on, right? So it has to be, you ever heard of the term apples to apples, not apples to oranges? Right. So we need to have apples to apples. Everything kind of has to be equal in the analysis to figure out if we have a gender pay gap disparity here. Excuse me. So if it is a man and a woman and they're in a job and there's an education requirement and they have to have a bachelor's degree, great. They both have to have a bachelor's degree. Okay. Or if it says they have to have at least a high school education where bachelor's is preferred. So if the man has an education and a bachelor's degree and the woman has an education and a bachelor's degree, then they're equal in that regard. If they're not, then right away we know the woman should not be paid equally because she doesn't have the amount of education the man has. So we have to understand that first and foremost. If it says that there has to be 3 to 5 years of experience in this position, and they both have let's just say they both have 3 years of experience, then we have equal there. But if someone has 3 years experience and the other one has 5 years experience, that 2-year difference is worth some sort of money. So they don't have to be equal. When we talk about experience, we're talking 6 months, maybe even a year, okay, is still considered to be equal because you're not going to get everybody out there that have the same start date. But we have to be pragmatic about it. Did they have approximately the same amount of education? The same amount of experience. And that's up to a year. If they're less than a year of experience, then we'll say, yeah, they're equal. Okay? Do the titles match? Are they in the same title? Are they called financial analyst? Or is one a financial analyst 1 and the other one's a financial analyst 2? Okay? So if all those things being equal, then men and women should be paid equally. If there is anything that is not equal, then yes, it's okay to have the other person be paid, or the male be paid more. Okay? So, if we think about it, I want you to understand, it's not about a minimum wage job, that whatever the minimum wage is. And that's like, well, that person gets 15 bucks an hour and I get 15 and a quarter. Or that person, I'm sorry, backwards. That person gets 15.25 and I get 15. There's a pay gap there. No. Okay? But if that person's getting 15.25 and you are both equal, then you should be paid 15.25 as a woman. Okay? So that's one thing I want to make sure you understand. So there's this thing that's called Equal Pay Day. We've already had it in March. So every year we have this thing called Equal Pay Day. And what does that mean? That means when a man works January 1 to December 31, he gets paid a certain dollar amount. For a woman to make that same amount of money, most of them have to work January 1 through December 31, and then start the new year again and go all the way to March 25, 2025. For this year, it was March 25. So that woman has to work 12 plus 3 more months, which is what? 15 months. She has to work 15 months to be paid the same amount of money a man worked in just 12 months. So here are some statistics from the Census Bureau, and I'm going to look at my notes. A white woman will get 84 cents to the man's dollar. Okay, so she's making 16% less. A Hispanic woman will make about 52 to 65 cents to that man's $1. So she's getting 35 to 48% less. A black woman, interestingly enough, will get 63 to 70 cents to that man's dollar. Okay? And then an Asian woman, she'll get 93 cents to that man's dollar. So I just laid out the more common ethnic or race groups. And it's all around the board. It's all across the board. But what the thing that was the main common or constant was, regardless of a woman's race, she's still being paid less. Okay? There are people who may argue, well, I know a woman who's a CEO of a company and she gets $9 million a year. And I know a woman at another CEO, or a man at another company as a CEO, and he gets $6 million a year. Okay, great. Wonderful that she gets $3 million more. Is she doing the same job? Is he doing the same job? Remember, everything has to be equal. So we can't just look at how much they're being paid and say, she gets more, so gender pay gap doesn't exist. Okay? So make sure you understand that we have to do some sort of analysis, that we just can't look at the bottom line and determine if there's a gap or not a gap. Okay? I personally will share you my story from 2014, when I worked at Arizona State University. The lady's name was Pat Brown. That really is her name. I know they sound like two very generic names, but her name really was Pat Brown. We had the same title. I can't remember the title, but I remember back then. I just remember my story. We had the same title, and we both had a master's degree, and we were both in the position. She came about 7 months after I did. We had the same title, same education. Actually, she was born in 1969, like I was born. And we had the same title, same starting position, whatever, work for ASU, same education, not same master's degree, but we each had a master's degree. And she was leaving my department. So I went to say goodbye to her and wish her well. And she said, yes, I'm finally going to break $40,000 a year. And I'm like, what does that mean? And I said, oh, really? I said, wow, okay. And then she told me her salary. She shared it. I said, oh, great. I'm standing in her doorway knowing that I already broke the $40,000 mark. So I went back to my seat to do the mathematics, to figure out how much more I was making or how much less she was making. And I have my notes right here. It came out to be 85 cents or 15% less than what I was making. So in 2014, after about 2 years of learning that gender pay gap exists, I experienced it kind of in reverse. I was the beneficiary because I was the male. She was not the beneficiary because she was a black woman. She was 85 cents to my dollar. Remember we said black women was 63 to 70 cents to my dollar? Well, she beat that statistic because she had a master's degree, okay? But still, even with a master's degree, she was paid 15% less than her male counterpart, with everything being equal, okay? I just saw a video on Facebook with Sharon Stone, some actress. You may still know her name, but she was very popular in the 80s and the 90s. And when she made a movie, in Basic Instinct, I think that was 1992, Michael Douglas was in that film. I believe it was him. Anyway, she said her male leading role, whatever guy, was made, I can't remember the dollar amount, was like, I think $8 million, was paid $8 million for his leading role. And she was the leading role as a female actress, the leading actress, $500,000. Huge difference in pay gap, right? And the video that I just watched about a week or two ago said 30 years later, they asked her to do a movie and they still wanted to pay her $500,000. And she turned down the role. She's like, no. She was saying there's still a problem. There's still pay disparity and inequity in Hollywood. So it doesn't matter if it's $8 million a year or $15 an hour. There's pay disparity, right? So that's pretty much what I want you guys to know about gender pay gap and gender identity and expression for this week. Please do your research. So fill in the holes from what I provided to you, learn more about it, and do your discussion and make sure you answer the prompts. The things I want you to consider this week for the discussion is equal pay day. And then consider the term identity, gender expression, and the disparities among sex, among men and women at work. What are the disparities among men and women in their roles at work? Okay, and have a great week. And as always, I'm here for you, so just send me an email, okay? Bye.